What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thank you for watching. There are literally like wind advisory warnings out today. We're supposed to get 50 to 60 mile an hour winds, which is pretty crazy. So I'm just gonna try to film the video in between the hurricane force winds. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be able to hear me very well. So just bear with me if the audio is not great. But today we have a very cool and unique little revolver that I have been wanting to try really since they first came out. And I've never had my hands on one until now. The Chiappa Rhino 357 Magnum. Now, I've heard people pronounce it several different ways. I've heard Chiappa. I've been saying Chiappa since the very beginning, so I will be calling it the Chiappa Rhino. If I'm pronouncing it wrong, let me know down in the comments. So the Chiappa Rhino is a revolver chambered in 357 Magnum, and this is the 60DS. And I'm sure you can already tell just by looking at it that this is not your grandpa's old revolver. It's quite a bit different than anything I've ever tried. First of all, and most importantly, I would say, it shoots from the bottom of the cylinder rather than the top, like 99% of other revolvers out there. So if I point it at the camera, hopefully you can see how low the barrel is on this thing. And then if I open it up, you can also see from the inside that the barrel does line up with the bottom of the cylinder, which significantly lowers your bore axis and theoretically should reduce muzzle rise when you shoot it. We'll see how well it actually works. All right, here it is, the 357 Magnum. Definitely not the softest shooting caliber out there, but I've shot so many hand cannons at this point, the 357 feels pretty mild, to be honest, but it's still a beast. The Chiappa Rhino is supposed to help reduce some of that recoil, so let's try this bad boy. We'll start with the optic. I'll probably go back to iron sights pretty quickly. We'll try single action first. Here we go, very first shot. Interesting. Very interesting. Weird, in a good way. Okay, the first thing I want to get across is that this revolver is very lightweight. It's probably the lightest 357 I've ever shot, and it definitely doesn't rise as much as you would expect it to, but it does punch the palm of your hand a little bit. So the low bore axis doesn't get rid of the recoil, it just pushes straight back more than it goes up, which does keep you on target for faster follow-up shots. So that's a very unique recoil impulse. Let's shoot it again. All right, I went ahead and took the optic off. One thing about the rail being so far forward is none of my optics really looked right on it. I tried the EOTech first, obviously it was just massive. So I went to the RMR, it didn't look right either. The Burris is the only one that I thought looked halfway decent. But honestly, I think I like it best just like this. Right out of the box with no optics and no accessories. Plus, the iron sights are really nice on this thing, so. Let's try them. Man. All right, I'm gonna dump the last 4 rounds right on the wall. The recoil is nuts on this thing. It's so lightweight, and yet it hardly moves at all. That's not normal for a 357 Magnum. Okay, I've been wanting to say this since I started the video. I have got to talk about the trigger in this thing. So, I'm not a big fan of double action revolver triggers. I almost never shoot them in double action. This one is actually not bad, but the single action trigger in this revolver is the best I've ever felt, hands down. And not just revolvers, it's probably the best handgun trigger I've ever felt, period. It's almost hard to put into words. There is no travel, no weight. It just feels like you're pushing a button. I don't know what the weight is. It feels like 2 pounds. Just phenomenal. Don't know if you guys can see it, but it is glorious. It almost makes it hard to pull your shot off target with a trigger that nice. I've never felt one quite like that. All right, let's go ahead and talk about what I would consider to be the main selling point of the Chiappa Rhino, which is the low bore axis and the reduced recoil that comes from it. So because this revolver shoots from the bottom of the cylinder, it dramatically lowers the bore axis and places the barrel more in line with your wrist, which should reduce muzzle rise when you shoot it. And this theory applies to all handguns across the board. Like Glocks, for instance, are known for having a pretty low bore axis, and because of that, they are a little less snappy than some other pistols out there. The Chiappa Rhino, however, is the most extreme example of this because it literally shoots from the opposite side of the cylinder. So it drops the barrel like almost an entire inch, and you can't get a much lower bore axis than that. Now, I also brought out a regular 357 revolver that shoots from the top of the cylinder, and I want to compare the muzzle rise between the two. They have the exact same barrel length. I will say this one is significantly heavier. The Chiappa Rhino is very lightweight, which naturally is going to give it a little more recoil, but maybe the low bore axis will make up for that and help keep the muzzle flat. Let's find out. And this is the scientific method that I came up with to do this experiment. So I stapled a white piece of paper to our target stand with red lines at every inch. I'm gonna try to place the muzzles as close to this as I can, and we'll film it in slow motion and hopefully see which one has more muzzle rise. Now, obviously, when you do a test like this, there's always gonna be individual factors that make the results not 100% consistent, but I think this is about as good as we can get it. All right, we'll go ahead and start with the Chiappa Rhino. One thing I'm worried about is the muzzle blast destroying the paper target. So I'm gonna bring the cylinder just behind the paper, and hopefully we can still see the muzzle on the slow-mo cam. Put it in single action. We're using the exact same round in both revolvers. And I'll shoot it from here. Well, it definitely destroyed the cardboard. Let's watch the slow-mo and see if we can at least tell how much muzzle rise we got. If not, we might have to change the setup a little bit. All right, well, I just watched the slow-mo and I actually think we can use that one. So when I took the shot, the front sight of the Chiappa Rhino was right at one of those red lines, and it ended up exactly 2 inches higher than where it started. So we'll go ahead and say the Chiappa Rhino had 2 inches of muzzle rise. And by the way, I was just relaxed, pulled the trigger to the rear. I wasn't trying to compensate for the recoil. I want these results to be as consistent as possible. So I think we'll use that one. I went ahead and replaced the target, left the cardboard, and we'll try the regular 357. And the regular 357, I really wish I had a revolver that was more similar in weight to the Chiappa Rhino, but to be honest, most 357s are gonna be heavier than that. It's extremely lightweight, so we'll go ahead and use this one, put it in single action, and I'm hoping the blast just goes through the same hole, so we can prevent what happened last time. Go ahead and rest my arm on the same spot. Oh yeah. Okay, it ripped the paper target, which tells me the blast was a little bit further forward on this one. And without even watching the slow-mo footage, I can tell you this one definitely felt like it had a lot more muzzle rise. Probably double, to be honest, so. Let's check the high-speed footage. Okay, I just watched it and that's about what I expected. It looks like it had at least twice the muzzle rise. And remember, I was trying to hold both revolvers exactly the same, slowly pull the trigger and kind of let them recoil. Obviously, you know, I was holding on to them, but I didn't want to like compensate for the recoil and try to keep them flat. If I did that, the Chiappa Rhino hardly moves at all. Now that being said, I wish there was a way to track rearward movement because I do think the Chiappa Rhino punches the palm of your hand quite a bit harder. So although it doesn't have as much muzzle rise, you do still feel all of that recoil. It's just in a different direction. Again, the regular revolver is quite a bit heavier, and that's obviously gonna dampen recoil as well. But if staying on target and fast follow-up shots is your main objective, there's nothing better than the Chiappa Rhino, in my opinion. All right, guys, before we get out of here, I have one more test that I wanna do, and of course, it requires Ballistic Bop. So last week we shot this old military helmet with the 22 long rifle, and to my surprise, it actually stopped. You can see those two bullet impacts right there. Neither one of those actually went through. And if you don't know, 357 is interchangeable with 38 Special. You cannot shoot 357 in a 38 Special, but you can shoot 38 in a 357. So I want to see if our old, I believe it's World War I or World War II military helmet can actually stop a 38 Special. If it does, then we'll hit it with a 357. But I don't think it will. I just want to see what the breaking point of this thing is, because it did stop a 22. And by the way, you might have noticed that the helmet is kind of cocked to the side. No, Bob is not repping his set. He's put those days behind him, but I wanted to get a direct bullet impact. And the only way to do that was to kind of angle the helmet a little bit. So this should work. 38 Special, just a regular ball round. Chiappa Rhino. Please don't come back at me. Gonna aim towards the bottom. Holy sh**. Okay, it still went a little higher than I wanted it to, but that is a massive dent. I can't tell if it went through or not. Let's check it out. And there's the impact. It stopped it. That 38 Special did not go through the helmet. Try to put it in the sun so you can see there's no bullet hole, but it did leave quite the dent. And although it did hit high, I still think that was a flush impact, because it created such a dent in this thing that the bullet just exploded on impact. And Bob has some shrapnel on his face. Well, you know what that means. Let's try the 357. All right, 357 Magnum, 158 grain soft point. I'll be shocked if it actually stops this one. I guess I'll just aim at his lips, since the last one still went high and I was aiming kind of low. It sure looked like it went through. Let's go check it out. All right, I rotated him a little bit so you guys can see it, but clearly the 357 went straight through. Looks like it easily went through, because there's not even really a dent. The bullet just passed through the helmet and out the other side, and oh no, it went straight through Bob's nose. That's not a good place to get shot. Sorry about that, Bob. If we go around to the back, we have an exit hole right there. So honestly, it surprised me that it even stopped the 22 and the 38 Special, because I just assumed these old war helmets were probably designed for very light frag and like bumping your head and stuff like that, not direct impacts. But the 22 and the 38, it actually did stop. Maybe in the future we'll try the 9mm. That would be a good middle ground between the 38 and the 357, because that is a big jump. But as you saw, it did not stop the 357. And Bob didn't make it. All right, guys, that is the Chiappa Rhino 357 Magnum. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. This is probably my favorite revolver I've ever tried. I'm gonna be honest, I absolutely love this thing. It's lightweight, which usually would be counterintuitive with a powerful revolver like this, because less weight means more recoil. Not the case with the Chiappa Rhino. They pretty much have gotten rid of that with the low bore axis, and it doesn't even feel like a 357 Magnum. So super cool. Can't believe it took me this long to get one, but now that I have, I'll probably end up getting a few more, because I absolutely love this thing. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you have a Chiappa Rhino, let me know what your experience has been. I've already heard from several people who have them and absolutely love them, and I've heard from nobody who has them and doesn't love them. So it seems to be pretty universal. As always, guys, if you liked the video, please hit the like button for me. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.